Jimmy and I are both wrestlers. Jimmy kind of went wrestling, grappling route as he got into high school and college, and then I did both in high school, but then kind of went the running route in college. Ran Division 1, but also was recruited and visited places like North Central. I started off at Springfield College in Massachusetts. So Jimmy and I have kind of always known about the opportunities with Division 3, Division 2, NAIA. But as we're learning more and more that there's a lot of cool schools and a lot of cool places. None that we knew of when we were in high school, and we're trying to create conversations with coaches like yourself and other coaches that you may have listened to um, present these conversations as if we were 18 years old again, and someone was like, "Hey, these are the things you need to know. This place is in a really cool location. You can be successful here. You can get great academics here. Hey, this place has a construction major. You could go there for construction, or um, this is a brewery degree you could get, or when we lived in Leadville, Colorado, the community college there had ski cat managing, and so there's all these different majors at some of these schools, and we just didn't know. So we're just trying to present conversations with awesome people like yourself that are doing really amazing things, but let people know and recruits know that there's a lot of cool schools out there. And if you're a committed athlete and you work hard and you want to be take your wrestling or running or whatever to the next level, if you're committed to doing it, there's a school out there for you, and you should never give up on your dreams about competing at the next level.
Yeah, no, very cool. All about it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we are live, folks. We are back off from a little bit of a layoff. We might be a little bit rusty. The Prince is back from jet setting over in Europe. And so we are excited to get back on the horn and get back going belly to belly tonight. We are joined uh, with Coach Tony Valek. He is the head coach at Division 3 powerhouse Augsburg University. He is the Open Mat NCAA Division 3 Coach of the Year. His Augies, is it Augies or Aggies?
Auggies. Yeah.
Augies. Okay, that's what I thought. His Augies were national champs in 2023 and 2024. The program has had such a huge, uh, you know, great tradition of wrestling. And if you've been in wrestling, you know of the name of Augsburg. So we are excited to learn more about the school, learn more about the program, learn more about the history. But coming up, it was a name that was always mentioned when we were at Trenton State or the College of New Jersey wrestling camp. So, Coach, welcome to Airey Bros Radio. Thanks for joining us this evening. We really appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, excited to be here, talk a little bit about college wrestling and Augsburg, what we're doing here in the Midwest.
Awesome. I guess first, since I butchered or had the question of the mascot, what is an Augie?
Yeah, so it's an eagle basically. So the conference that we're in, we're really clever with all their names. It's the Augsburg Auggies, the St. Thomas Tommies, the Gustavus Gusties, whatever. So it's an eagle actually is what an Augie is.
Okay. Okay, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. I love to know all the ins and outs of the schools and their mascots and the origin story. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, we always wrestle a D2 Augustana in South Dakota as the Auggies as well. They only got one G, we got two G's. So that's always kind of a little bit of whatever, what we wrestle for, I guess, is how many G's are in Augie.
Okay.
So I take it you guys win the battle of the G's every year.
We've had a lot of success, so we were really excited. We got them back on the schedule. You know, we always kind of have challenges getting teams to wrestle us out here because we're not technically in a conference for wrestling. We're in a regional, so it's not like mandated. So Augustana put us back on the schedule a year ago, so we were really appreciative of that. And we did find a way. We did win that duel. We didn't wrestle our best, so we bringing them to our place this year. So.
So, Coach, you say having trouble because you guys have that super region, for lack of a better term, and
Yep.
you guys are a powerhouse. Like Rich said, we knew about Augsburg growing up at the Jersey Shore. Had some coaches that went to TC&J, and they would always talk about Augsburg. What do you guys do, or how do you kind of get that schedule loaded or packed when people might not want to wrestle you and don't necessarily have to wrestle you because you're not on their schedule, not on their conference? How do you kind of go about that? Is it every year you're going and you're chasing teams trying to get a good schedule for the guys?
Yeah, a little bit. We kind of go to a lot more open tournaments or invitationals, and we travel to get to them. We kind of believe in getting those multi-match days and think they're more valuable for the end of the year, maybe than a dual meet, even though dual meets are obviously a cool experience while you're in them. So we've got this big circled ones. Our biggest one always is the Battle of the Bergs with our big rival, Wartburg College. Down in Iowa, we got a big one with UW lacrosse every year. They're a top, few program year in and year out. So we've got a couple that are circled. But yeah, getting those matches is hard. Minnesota, there's only two other teams with Division III wrestling. And then we got a bunch of D2s, and it turns out it's not probably great for their recruiting and whatever for them to wrestle us. So we was big. I always still think it would be great to get St. Cloud back on the schedule. They've won a handful of Division II national championships, and we've asked the last handful of years, but they haven't been interested. So I think we'd get a ton of people in a packed house. They're only like an hour and 15 minutes from us, but maybe next year we'll see.
All right. And sorry, Rich.
Go ahead.
Going in, this is gonna be going for title number 3, trying to get the three-peat. You already got 2. What's the secret sauce? What are you gonna do this year to kind of get over that edge, get that three-peat?
Yeah, I think it's leaning into the things that we do best. We've got a really big group of seniors. So we recruited this group during basically the COVID slowed down year where we barely were able to be on the mat. We had like 2 competitions. And so all we did was go out and hustle and recruit. They didn't say we couldn't call and even meet with recruits and do all of those things. So we brought a class in of 20 couple guys, not our typical group. And we have 17 of them will be graduating this year. So we've kind of been log jammed in it's a good thing to have great retention. But so kind of leaning into those guys, they've been kind of the core of our team, even if all of them weren't in our varsity lineup. And then staying hungry, we didn't wrestle our best tournament at the national tournament last year and made it super, super close. I've never been part of a national tournament like that one where it was kind of anybody's game going into the final session. And so I think just knowing that we got to get better if we want to have that feeling of success again. So trying to keep them motivated that way.
Coach, go back to the Battle of the Bergs. That was, as I was mentioning before, we used to go to Trenton State or College of New Jersey wrestling camp, so we're familiar with Division III wrestling. And in the old USA Wrestling News and those magazines, you'd always see that would be something that was mentioned, was that duel. What is that like for someone who's maybe not from your area, from the Midwest, and has had experienced that? How does that compare to any other maybe big rivalry through the Big Ten or in the Midwest? I know wrestling in the Midwest is huge. Talk about that a little bit. How important that duels is, and knowing that one at the very least is going to be on the schedule every year.
Yeah, so the Battle of the Bergs is, incredible. So both Augsburg and Wartburg have now won 15 team national championships. So every national championship since 1995, one snuck in. So since 91, those programs have started winning, and 95 was the last time one of those 2 programs didn't win the Division III national title. So really the Battle of the Bergs is who wins at the end of the year. And then every time those teams have been at the national dual meet event, we've also, one of our 2 programs has won that event. So definitely goes through our 2 programs as of right now. And that one's a huge rivalry duel. So kind of unique. Augsburg's close to downtown Minneapolis. We're in a major urban setting right across the street from the University of Minnesota that's got 50,000 students. We can see US Bank Stadium where the Vikings play. And then Wartburg is in Waverly, Iowa, super small town, Iowa. They got a few gas stations and a couple small restaurants. It's definitely 2 different communities, but we both are supported. So the Battle of the Bergs we hosted last year, and we brought extra bleachers in. So we had 2,200 people there. Our gymnasium sits 2,000. So I feel like, having a packed stadium. We generally have Jason Bryant, who announces the Olympics and D1s. He lives right here in Minnesota, so he generally announces our home duels and does an incredible job. And we try to do the smoke machine and the spotlight and all of those types of things. And then both teams travel well. So Wartburg brings I mean, if we had 2,200 people here, they probably had 400 or 500 of them, and they're rowdy, right? And they're into it. When we go down there, I always think it's unique. They get their student section to show up before we warm up. I don't know how you get college kids to show up an hour and a half before a duel, but they do down in Waverly, and those guys do their research. I mean, they've looked you up on social media and know what your girlfriends or your kids or your whatever, and they're going to get personal and heckle. And to me, it makes it just a blast. We prepare our guys for that. They've had our number really bad in the Battle of the Bergs for quite a few years here. They get a little more practice at dual meets, being in a real tough conference. But we did find a way in a crazy double overtime match at heavyweight last year to win 20-19. And we wrestle for what we call the Swentz Millboy Championship belt. So super cool, like big leather belt that was made up, 15 years ago or something like that now. And it's named after Jeff Swenson, who won 10 national championships as a coach for Augsburg, and Jim Miller, who won 10 national championships as a coach for Wartburg. So kind of cool to have that traveling trophy. We go down there this year to that small town atmosphere, packed gym. So certainly a date we look forward to, and something that motivates our guys and honestly helps prepare them for the national tournament. I think to the man, every guy would say they felt more pressure in that duel than any match they've ever wrestled in. And I think that helps prepare you for those big matches at the NCAA tournament as well.
So I got two questions for you there. Does the Battle of the Berg, does that usually determine or predict the placing at NCAs?
So it hasn't as much during my time here. So this kind of hurts to say, but we hadn't won a Battle of the Bergs match dual meet since I was wrestling in 2010. So they were on and there was a couple of years where we didn't have it because of COVID there, but they were on like a 10-match win streak or something like that in the dual meet in the Battle of the Bergs. We had won national duels a few times. I think our team composition is a little bit those multi-match days, making weight, and not having just one match. It's a little bit different preparation, so all those things. So it actually hasn't been, they beat us in 23 when we won nationals. They beat us in 19, and when we won nationals, they actually beat us in 20 when we were the heavy favorites before things got canceled. So they've kind of had our number in the dual meet, and I feel like we probably outperformed our expectation in that individual national tournament. I'd rather have it that way, honestly. If you only get one of them, I'd rather have the NCAA tournament, but I don't like losing in anything. So I feel like we definitely have had that Battle of the Bergs date circled. And then, we were talking about motivating this year's team. They actually beat us at national duels a year ago, and again, another close duel. So I feel like keeping guys motivated. We still got work to do. We haven't had that undefeated season, even though I feel like we were the best team a year ago. So I think keeping guys motivated and circling, those dates on the calendar is something that we want to write this year, is motivating for our guys as well.
Okay. Yeah, I guess not having that dual meet win can always be a carrot that you can, hey, we got nationals, but we still got these other two that we got to get all of them, get all three of them lined up, national duels, the dual meet and nationals. You mentioned, it goes back to when you were wrestling, was the last time there was a win of the Battle of the Bergs. For you, what's it like comparing going through that experience as an athlete, but then also as a coach? Which one is more nerve-wracking? Which one was more exciting? Is it similar in any ways?
Honestly, I thought it was a lot easier wrestling in the duels, competing, right? You kind of control your own fate so much more, especially your individual match, right? And after your match was over, you could kind of enjoy the duel per se. Now I feel like, I don't know why I get whipped up in duels again. I'm super competitive, and I feel like I have such better comfort in those individual settings. And for some reason in dual meets, it's hard, right? 10 matches in a college duel. A lot of things can happen, especially when you have the expectation, when we wrestle Wartburg or anybody, we've got a big target on our back because of the success that we've had. And it matters in recruiting, it matters in experience, and it just matters in how we're trying to go about our business here. So definitely easier as a wrestler than it is as a coach now, sitting in the corner, that's for sure.
Coach, she says it matters in recruiting, and You said 1995, I think, was the last time that a team that wasn't Augsburg or Wartburg won the Division III national championship. So what is that edge? Is it the dual meet? How do you, because you're probably going against those guys as far as getting recruits. What's that edge? What kind of puts you over the edge as far as getting recruits from them?
Yeah, we've evolved a little bit since I've been coaching. I feel like in the 90s and 2000s, Augsburg and Wartburg both relied a little bit on the transfer. They recruited really well in Minnesota and Wisconsin. We'd get some guys from the Gophers to come over every once in a while. They'd get some guys from UNI or Iowa State. And not that you didn't have the 4-year guys, but your studs, your national champs, a lot of times were from those schools. I feel like that's really slowed down for us. We've kind of focused in on more the team culture and building guys. And also it's harder with the transfer portal and just other opportunities, the D2 scholarship schools in our state. So I feel like we've leaned more into that team culture piece. So it is kind of two different strategies. I mean, of their 10 guys, starters last year, I think like 7 of them were transfers, and they had like 7 different states in their starting lineup. And again, they're having a lot of success. It's just a different strategy to have success. Whereas we only had guys from Minnesota and Wisconsin in our starting lineup. We had one transfer who was the older brother of a guy who was on our team already. So I think just a little bit different strategy there. It's not that we can't pull guys from other states. I think we can. We have had lots of guys with interest. It's more that it's harder to build that relationship and vet what is this guy's goals, what is his motivation in the classroom and work ethic and family support. If I only get to talk to him on the phone and maybe meet him once or twice before he makes that decision. Whereas the guys in Minnesota, especially, we're coaching them in summer wrestling when they're cadets and juniors, where their club coaches, their high school coaches. So by the time you're really recruiting them as juniors and seniors, I think you know a lot more about what their goals are and how they're going to handle the social and academic side. So that's kind of been our strategy. Speaking of guys from New Jersey, we do have a guy from New Jersey on our team this year. Our first, I think, since I've been coaching. We've actually got a guy, Max Borton from Tabernacle, New Jersey. And he actually wrestled last year. He was an All-American at Ursinus College and was looking for a change. So that'll be our only transfer on our team this year, but good to get a guy from out east. So maybe we can get a few more coming our way after we built that relationship.
Yeah, let's get that Jersey pipeline going.
For sure. Yeah, and that was a connection we had. We had tried to get a transfer guy, Nick Latanzi, who wrestled at Brown University, and it was a Melbourne prep guy. And that didn't end up working out because Nick had hurt his knee. But he was helping out and kind of knew Max and kind of said, hey, these coaches are really motivated. Maybe you should check it out. And Max came out and loved it. So yeah, it only starts with one, and all of a sudden, never know what type of pipeline you can get going.
Love hearing that. Love having guys to root for too, right? Rich and I always say one of the epic things about this podcast is we talk to coaches like you. You guys tell us who to root for, where the kids are from, and all right, we got a Jersey guy at Augsburg. He's one of our favorite D3 wrestlers right now. We don't even know who he is. So
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Coach, you said because of the COVID, you have, I believe it's 17 seniors.
Yeah.
And when we had Matt Oliver, the coach from Huntington, you said you listened to that episode. He kind of broke the internet with some of his quotes. We had a quote from him saying how D3 is the toughest division. We'll get into that with you, but he also kind of let us know about how hard it is to recruit and how hard it is to get guys. So I'm kind of curious how year in, year out, you guys always doing good. You have 17 seniors this year. What's the secret to that success with no scholarships?
Work ethic, relationship building, I did appreciate Coach from Huntington. He talked about being efficient with your time and kind of understanding the guys you're going after. I think that's important for us as well. We do really well. The guys who are really high academic get big academic money, and all of a sudden it's a similar price to our D2 schools or our state schools, the other system, the Wisconsin D3s are state school prices, so it's a big difference cost wise. And so I feel like that's kind of our wheelhouse, or any small business owners, split families type things where maybe their income isn't as high, they can get good financial aid. So I think being efficient, unfortunately, you're double school teacher family who's a 3.2 GPA, even if that guy's got to really be willing to work and do the challenges financially. So we don't spend a lot of time chasing those guys. So I think there's some efficiency there. But then it's just building that relationship. I think so many scholarship schools try to hide behind, kind of buying kids to a degree, right? And I really believe that the guys that have had the most success in our program, they could have went to South Dakota State and had a small scholarship or walk on. They could have went to North Dakota State, even the Gophers, but they choose Augsburg because of the relationship that we built, and they're going to get that coaching, right? They're going to get that opportunity to wrestle in events like the Battle of the Bergs and compete. And I don't know if they're going to get that same opportunity on that Division I program that's has a scholarship invested in the two guys in front of you. How do you catch those guys without opportunity, without as much coaching, right? And so I think, we see that, our heavyweight last year was kind of a cool story. Tyler Kim was a one-time state place winner in high school at Apple Valley High School, where Gable Stevenson and Mark Hall and Seth Gross, all those guys, right? He was a one-time state place winner, came to Augsburg, got better every single year, made our varsity lineup, placed at the NCAA tournament a couple times, but he beat at the Luther Open the last 2 years Bradley Hill, who was the University of Iowa starter, right? How's our one-time state place winner being the Iowa Hawkeyes starter, who's now actually going to South Dakota State, I think I saw. But and to me, it's because he just had those opportunities and that coaching poured into him that he hadn't had previous to that. And I don't think Tyler necessarily he'd have got swallowed up in those first 2 years if he'd have went to one of those programs right from the get-go. So I think that's kind of the dream we're selling, that you're going to get invested in, you're going to have an awesome experience, you're going to get this team experience, and it is unique. Winning a national championship compared to getting second is a dramatically different experience. We have got to do things like go to the White House. We've got honored at the basketball games of like the Sweet 16. The last few years we've thrown the first pitch out at the Minnesota Twins game with our entire team. We had LG Networks came out to the Battle of the Bergs last year and is doing a big documentary that's going to come out at the beginning of the season here on the Battle of the Bergs rivalry. So, that added a little bit of pressure having about 20 extra cameras at the Battle of the Bergs in the NCAA tournament. But I also think that's what kids are looking for. They want that experience. They want that exposure. And so I think that's kind of given us our edge, that we're able to do that. And then obviously when you're retaining guys and they're saying good things about the program, it just kind of feeds itself. So recruiting and retention and wrestling success all kind of go hand in hand.
So you dropped a lot on us there.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's good. Definitely want to talk about the White House and throwing out pitches. But one thing that kind of stood out to me was you mentioned a 3-2 might not get it done. And like Rich said at the beginning, we're both junior college guys. So to
Yep.
me, 3-2 is that's pretty good. What is the average GPA that you're looking for when you're talking to recruits?
Yeah, so 3.5 and above is gonna get you $26,000 a year at Augsburg plus, all the way up to 30 couple $1,000s a year in academic scholarship. So it just makes the financial sides a lot more realistic, right? So that 3.2 guy probably needs to get some sort of financial aid to make it realistic, or it's just a big investment, right? It's just a big investment for a family. And when you could go to a UW La Crosse or an Eau Claire that have quality programs for $10,000 less, that's kind of a hard sell, right? So it's not that we can't have not that we don't have success with guys with that 3.2 GPA. I think it just usually means they're a small business owner. Their parents are farmers, they're electricians, they're barbers, they're whatever, and their income's a little bit lower. So they get that financial aid to kind of make up the difference.
From an academic perspective, Coach, what is there anything unique at the school that maybe be a draw? Is it a liberal arts school? Are we looking at some similar teachers college, pre-med, pre-law, those sorts of things, or anything unique that maybe some people are coming there for?
Yeah, so we're a liberal arts college. So, the nice part about that is you don't need to lock into your major right from the get-go. A lot of times at the state school system, if you don't lock into your major, if you change it, you're looking at 4.5, 5.5 years. So we get a little bit more time where you're taking some of those generals and kind of figuring out what you want to do. I always think it's interesting. Do most 17 or 18-year-olds really know what they want to do for the rest of their life? I certainly didn't. And so I think that gives you a little bit of time. I think that's a big advantage. And then we're probably most known for our business department here at Augsburg. Again, with our location, there's per capita more Fortune 500 companies in the Twin Cities than basically anywhere in the country for number of people. And so I think that's a big advantage. With the success our wrestling programs had over the years, we've got guys in all different fields to kind of get you started, get you that career opening, especially knowing that they've got the skills of dealing with adversity and time management and work ethic, all those things. So accounting, finance, probably our number one major. And then we've had a lot more guys going into the sciences, especially biology, exercise science, kind of going into PA school, PT school, chiropractor school. We haven't had quite as many go down like the full pre-med route, but a lot of guys kind of getting involved in that medical side as well. So those are probably the most common things for our wrestling guys here at Augsburg.
Okay.
Coach, you brought up before kind of being across the street from the University of Minnesota, being kind of downtown, and Walper kind of being in the middle of nowhere. Do you feel that that is an advantage or a disadvantage as far as kind of having to rally the kids and make sure they're not getting into anything or, going over to University of Minnesota and getting in trouble?
Good question. I think both, right? So I think initially it's actually a hurdle for us to get guys to be open to Augsburg. Most of Minnesota wrestling is strong in rural areas, more the double A, the smaller school system, maybe the suburbs. In Minneapolis and St. Paul, they're not turning out many college wrestlers. So that's just a lifestyle change. If your graduating class in high school was 75 and you're coming to Minneapolis, it's just a little bit of a hurdle to get them here, right? Once they're here, I think it's a huge advantage. Most college towns, weekend entertainment centers around one thing. Ours guys got all kinds of ways to go out and just have healthy lifestyle choices, whether it's live concerts, pro sports, getting out in the park and trail system, comedy clubs, axe throwing, top golf, whatever. There's tons of ways. The Lace thing they've been doing, they started a run club or got involved in a run club. I don't know if you guys got that going out east, but they had went down, a couple of our guys had went to Florida, and there were like 300 people who did this run club, and they got like speakers and EDM and just energy. Well, our guys came back and they found one that had 5 people. Wednesday night, there were 500 people in a run club, right? And
Yeah.
it's both genders, obviously. There's some of that. And it's just like, so to me, I think that's actually a huge advantage, even though there are things to go out and get in trouble and do those things. But I think team culturally, our guys know their goals. It's not that they don't have some fun. It's more that it's within reason and taking advantage of a lot of those things. Our freshmen moved in a week ago Wednesday. On Saturday, a bunch of them went to the Zach Bryan concert at US Bank Stadium. And then last Saturday, almost all of our freshmen went and tailgated the Gopher football game and went to the Gopher football game, right? So I think you kind of have that extension of that Big Ten campus without the huge class sizes and all of those types of things. So I think once we get them here, it becomes a big advantage, especially as they grow up and become juniors and seniors and are like, holy cow, like I can go out and do all these different things. This is awesome. So kind of a double-edged sword a little bit.
How do you reel them back in during the season when there's a Zach Ryan concert going on and you guys are at Iowa Central at the Open or something like that?
Well, the cold helps, right? There's not quite as much to do once the snow comes during wrestling season. And again, I think that's team culture, getting the right guys, communicating what their goals are. We talk a lot about chasing the experiences that you're going to remember for the rest of your life. I don't think I look back and wish I'd have partied more in college. I look back and I wish we'd have went and climbed more, made a trip to Colorado and climbed some mountains, or I wish I'd things. And so I think that when you have that national championship experience, that adds back in and they want to do it again. So I think team culture is the main thing.
Man, coach, you just hit it on the head. I don't wish I partied more. I wish I did, climbing mountains and stuff. That is so poignant, and as an older male, it kind of sinks to my heart because, when you're in college, you're thinking about all that, but hindsight being 2020, you'd rather be part of a national championship team, meet the president, throw out, pitch out, something like that.
For sure. And it turns out that the activities surrounding that are awesome too, right? Because you are a little bit of a whatever. When we bring our gold trophies down on the Twins game, it's not like those go back with us. The guys got them out on the concourse, and it's like, what better way for a conversation starter than having a big gold trophy that everyone recognizes, right? It's the same as Division One, anybody's trophy, right? And so I just think those experiences are so unique and are the things that our guys lean back on. So certainly a motivator for them.
Coach, you mentioned the temperature can be a deterrent in terms of keeping people indoors in the wintertime in Minneapolis. Probably the coldest weekend of my life was spent in Bloomington, Minnesota, back in, I think it was February 2006. There's a company called, there's a big bike company in Bloomington. The name escapes me right now, but they had like a huge winter thing for all their buyers and sellers and stuff. So I would go there every year when I worked for this company, and it was negative 22 degrees when I stepped out of the airport, and it was frigid that weekend, but it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, it can be cold. I feel like being in the city, sometimes I think when we travel, a lot of our competitions are in the smaller communities. The wind, right? That's a nice part about being in the city. The wind isn't so crazy just because you got so many buildings. So the wind is what makes it tough when we get up to Fargo or down to Cedar Rapids or all those, different places. When it gets flat, it gets a little bit colder too.
Yeah. And it's always sunny and 80 in the wrestling room.
For sure. For sure.
You mentioned, Minneapolis and St. Paul is not necessarily known for its wrestling like some of the other areas in Minnesota. Is that uh, more of a hockey kind of thing in the bigger cities, or is there something else going on that's drawing kids or men specifically,
Yeah,
boys?
hockey's big,
Yeah.
but that's still even more the suburbs in rural Minnesota. Basketball, volleyball, any of your indoor sports, Minnesota's pretty strong at. We're obviously not a baseball or golf or football aren't kind of the strongest sports that we're known for. So those indoor sports we've had a lot of success with. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why the Minneapolis St. Paul wrestling scene isn't super strong. We do give back, and we actually are like community services. We ref the little kid park board reffing in Minneapolis. So I think that's really good for our kids to, see how fortunate they are. A lot of those kids are wrestling in sneakers and in t-shirts and going at it, and they don't know the difference about whether our guys are, Olympians or Cale Sanderson or whether they're college wrestlers at Augsburg. So I think that's a good way for our guys to get a little bit of that perspective that they are super fortunate. And like, again, all their obligations right now are to go to school and wrestle. There's a lot of other kids who don't have that same fortunate situation. So,
Yeah. And that's one of the things is a reoccurring theme with us too, and some of our guests is just gratitude and having gratitude. And I know that's been a big thing with the rise of Penn State and the guys always bringing up gratitude and having gratitude for having the ability to do the things that you're doing, and the physical capabilities as well to do those things, because not everyone is as blessed as college athletes and college wrestlers, regardless of whether it's Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, NAIA, JUCO. You should be pretty grateful for everything that you have the ability to do and perform.
100%. And well, we get some preseason practices now in Division 3, so we get to have a few spread out. So we actually had one of those today, and that was kind of the message, right? Like, man, it's so nice I like recruiting. I don't even mind some of the administrative side of things, but it's just college athletics and college campuses in general are fighting, right? For enrollment, for budgets. Division 3's fighting with some of the Division I NIL and settlements at the NCAA, all those things. And I was just like, man, it's so good to be in here with you guys. Like, this is such a safe haven and so positive. I think that it's awesome that wrestling in general has evolved so much. I think the whole we're going to run you into a brick wall and do stadium stairs and 2-hour live practices, that's not our strategy whatsoever. If a good sign to me is when practice ends, if guys are still in there getting better, getting some pull-ups in, working on a couple things of technique, doing some core, when you still got 35 of your 40 guys still hanging out 20 minutes after practice, I think that's a good place to be. They're supposed to be tired, but also not running them into the ground, especially at the beginning of September when we're 6 months out from our NCAA tournament. I think there's some balance there for sure.
Coach, so we like to talk about the program, but you just got a little inside baseball, and we are geeks when it comes to training and working out. So I'm curious to what the practice looks like. How long are your practices? You like to get the guys in and out of there. What's a typical day look like during the season?
Yeah, great question. We don't have big long grind practices almost ever. So most of our practices are around 90 minutes, right? We basically never go live for more than 30 minutes. And a lot of our live is 3 ways where you kind of got a fresh guy rotating in, minute goes, 2 minute goes. And kind of with that idea that one of the most important components of college wrestling is being relatively healthy, right? And relatively is a tough thing to even stay, right? Guys' bodies get beat up, and we also want them to be motivated in February and March and excited about the sport, not right now. So we kind of ease into it and hold them back. They want to hit the ground running right now. But we do a lot of tumbling and skills kind of to start practice, warm-up drills that whether they know it or not, are intentionally kind of working on some of those wrestling skills that you need to just have a foundational base, right? And I think even whatever I call them, those Jordan Burroughs muscles, I think most wrestlers are always working on those grinder, tricep, back, whatever. And those things are awesome, but having a little bit of pop goes a long ways in the sport. And so we work a lot on those, jumping, calisthenics, some of those types of things. And then working within our individual plan. The other thing that we're really fortunate with our success and our location is we basically have 10 guys in the room every single day. So we got 2 full-time Augsburg coaches plus basically a fundraised coach that's full-time. And then we got 7 more guys that are stipend coaches working in the area, volunteer coaches that come in. So we can be pretty efficient even with our technique. It's even when we have the full group in there, it's almost individualized because you got a coach for like every 2 groups. So I think that's a big advantage of ours is kind of working on those things. During the season, we lift twice a week. It's like a 30-minute endurance lift, we call it. So it's kind of going almost from exercise to exercise, kind of simulating a wrestling match. Your grip and your forearms tend to give out as much as even your big muscles. So those are some of our kind of training philosophies that we've had for a lot of years that I think have had success for us, getting ready to go at the end of the season rather than being ready at that first tournament of the season.
Coach, you bring up the amount of coaches that you have on staff, and I know the coach that you took the program over from is still on staff. What is the secret to that? Because I feel like you look at a lot of Division III schools or a lot of schools in general, there's 1 or 2 coaches, and you said, hey, we almost have a coach for every weight class. How do you get them to come in and help out and volunteer their time?
Again, I think it goes back to relationship building for the most part. It certainly isn't money, that's for sure, right? But I think that's the nice part about location, right? We got lots of guys who are working in the area, and it tends to be the guys who have graduated until they have kids. Once they have kids, a lot of times their schedules just get busy, and maybe they come every once in a while. But really, it's their workout. It's their relationship, and they acknowledge that the young guy coaches who did that for them, now it's their turn to kind of pass that along. So, what's hard is I think if I was going to take over another program in a state long ways away, like that's a tough thing to get going right from the get-go. It takes time as you kind of have those graduates come through, but almost all of them are Augsburg wrestling alumni, except for we got Taylor Vance, who actually wrestled for the University of Nebraska. His younger brother, Parker, wrestles with us. Taylor was an All-American for Nebraska, like a 3-time blood round guy. He beat Aaron Brooks in one of the duels against Penn State. Going back to Battle of the Bergs, to put in perspective, the Vance family has been part of a lot of duels. They've been to Rec Hall, they've been to, Penn State, they've been to Hawkeye Arena, right, or Carver Hawkeye, and they say their best event they have ever been to was the Battle of the Bergs this year. Even Taylor, who was wrestling in them, so I think that puts a little bit of perspective of how unique that duel was this year when it came down to that last match. So, mostly young alumni or connections of the program, and getting them a little gear, traveling them with us, hanging out on Friday nights, involved in their significant others. I think there's just a lot of little pieces that make people feel like they're part of that family.
Rich, I know you got a question for Coach, but you have us sold on Battle of the Bergs. We love the rivalries. We come from a small town in New Jersey, and we got a pretty good crosstown rival, but we want to see the Battle of the Berg. So I don't mean to speak for you, Rich, but I'm sold.
Yeah,
well, I think this year Battle of the Bergs is going to be back on, not that this helps you guys necessarily, on Iowa Public Television. So I
we
remember
love
when I was
Iowa
wrestling
Public Television.
Dan Gable announced it on Iowa Public Television. So we're going to be back on that this year. So we might be moving the date by one day. But yeah, it's definitely a bucket list item to come check out at some point.
That's awesome. Coach, I'm so old. My dad used to order the Iowa Public Television VHS tapes from the seasons before. So
Yeah.
it was always a great day in the fall when the matches from last year would show up and we could watch them. I'm curious, going back to the coaches and the coaching tree, having all of those assistants, and you've been with the program for over a decade now. Was that something that was around when you were an athlete? Did the program have that many assistants, or is that something that's built as you've been with the program?
Yeah, I think that's something that Coach Swenson, who coached 10 national championships, kind of pioneered. He had a couple guys, Scott Worley and Donnie Wickman, who were kind of his right and left-hand man that had full-time jobs, but also loved Augsburg wrestling, and that was kind of their passion. And then they had brought all the young guys along. So they kind of had the three-headed monster, whatever you want to call it. And that's kind of how we have built our program. We got the 3 guys who are running the day-to-day operations, doing the recruiting, supporting the guys academically. And then the other guys, they have basically no responsibilities in that realm. I know a lot of programs, even Coach Oliver was talking about having his assistant coaches recruit. I think sometimes a challenge if you're only in there a couple days a week to really, and I get that they can help build that relationship, but for us, the full-time guys, like, we're going to take care of you academically and socially and help you financially figure out summer jobs and internships. We're going to help with resumes and parking passes and roommates and just all of those things, right? And that way you can run on the wrestling mat. It's easy. Everybody's motivated on the wrestling mat. So we kind of take care of all those other things. So there's some sort of balance there. I think that is another way, though, making sure those other guys don't really have many responsibilities that aren't as fun. They just get to do the relationship building and scrapping on the mat and sitting in the corner. That's really what those young guys want to do. They want to holler at them and get a little bit of that glory. And I don't really care that much about that anymore. At the national tournament, sometimes I think I can be a little more level-headed in some of the strategies of challenges and those types of things. But the rest of the year, I'm not too worried about who's sitting in the corner. So I think there's some value in that as well.
A common thing that comes up with the head coaches we talk to is that CEO role of running a program. And I think a lot of times when people get into coaching, it's about X's and O's and creating workouts and programs and plans and being in the corner and doing those sorts of things. And when you get into that position, you kind of realize pretty quickly that it is more responsibility than just lacing up the boots and getting on the mat and doing the drills and sort of that stuff. You did say you don't mind a lot of those things. I'm curious what your thoughts are on expense reports. What is your favorite aspect of the CEO role? And when did you know you wanted to be a coach?
Yeah, good question. So one, I would say that's where my main skill set is in that CEO role. Like I know some wrestling technique. I believe in training and some of those things, but a lot of that stuff is other guys' passion. So I kind of let them run with it. I think organizing and all those pieces is where I really bring the most value to the program. So Coach Molsoff and I have been the two full-time coaches since we took over in 2014-15. And he's like all relationship based, not your most organized guy. Like every kid who's ever went through the program loves every parent of every Minnesota USA Storm wrestler loves him. And so I think we've had a really unique partnership in that from the get-go, we kind of ran this program together. I think I didn't have your typical assistant coach role where you're just like getting on the mat with the kids. I was already kind of running the organization of the things from the get-go, and that's still kind of how we operate. We flop titles. It's really because this is my long-term plan, and I've got 3 little boys at home, and supporting a family is a little simpler on a head coaching position than it is as an assistant coaching position. So I've been really fortunate in that. My degree in school was accounting and finance, so I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My older brother works for an accounting firm, and my dad kind of was in finances. My oldest brother's an accounting teacher, so everyone kind of went that route. My high school coach and high school coach accounting, so I took or taught it. So I had like 4 years of accounting in high school. So I was like, well, whatever, I'll just roll with it. And so I graduated from Augsburg, and I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was the grad assistant coach at Augsburg for 2 years. I did a master in the art of leadership, and that was when I first kind of got my taste of coaching and kind of seeing what it was all about. And I think I saw that so many coaches put so much value on the 1.5 hours in the practice room, and that isn't the recipe to have the most success. I still think Division I staffs missed the mark on it. You got 4 full-time positions. I know you got a director of ops and stuff, but you don't need 3 or 4 guys who are Olympic level wrestlers. To me, those guys didn't know how to support the guys around them quite as much, right? And I think Penn State does it best. They seem to kind of have their roles in different areas. I think Rob Cole has shown he can kind of do those things everywhere. I think Brian Smith and Kevin Dresser, I think there's some good examples of it. But I think that's been satisfying for me, seeing that recruiting and strategizing and supporting kids, our academic success, all those things translates to wrestling success. At the beginning, I think we chased the wrestling success right away because we had some guys who maybe didn't fit our team culture, and that stunk. I'll never go back to that. And so I think it's extra gratifying. I mean, we had 20 Scholar All-Americans last year. We led the country. We were 6th in the academic national team standings, basically the only team who was relevant on the wrestling mat for the most part. So I think knowing that side can produce the wrestling results still builds those relationships, and we're just doing it a little bit different way. And I think that we're going to continue to do that, right? We'll keep training hard. We'll keep doing all those pieces, but I think the off the mat things is really where my skill set lies.
Yeah, I guess as a accounting undergrad, you actually don't mind expense reports.
I would say I like the financial strategy more than the debits and credits. If I was going to go in the business world, I'd be way more interested in like being on a leadership strategy team with the financial perspective rather than the guy paying the bills or doing the debits and credits. So I think financial strategy would be more in my line of thought.
All right. And you got a master's in leadership. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a cool program. Obviously it can translate to a lot of different things, but we certainly had some guys.
You there, Jim?
I'm here, sir.
Okay.
I was waiting for you to blink your eyes.
I was hoping he would come back.
Coach, you still there?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that. Froze up on us for a sec.
Rich,
Coach,
where were we?
Coach, you were just talking about the masters in leadership when you broke up. I didn't want.
Yeah. So master of leadership's I think cool. It can be business realm. It can be in education. Obviously, it can translate into coaching. So I think there's some really positive sides to it. And we've certainly had some guys take advantage of that, especially with COVID. We've had some guys who graduated who still had COVID eligibility and kind of went down that route.
Okay. Yeah.
Coach, I have a question. You mentioned, having the finance degree, and obviously you've been with Augsburg, so you might not know outside of where you're at, but looking at other programs, do you see where they might not do their expense reports the right way, or they might not be managing that budget well? Or would you have any suggestions for a wrestling coach that comes to you and like, hey, what do I have to worry about with managing this budget? Where should I put my money? Where should I save it?
Yeah, good question. I think one of the main things is building relationships with your administration on campus and using some of that financial sense for that argument. We've got a big roster. They're paying tuition. I think leveraging some of those types of things to try to build up your budget. Obviously, when you're fiscally responsible and you can explain what things cost and what you need, it's an advantage in fundraising with alumni, with potential donors. And then just making choices that make sense. Sometimes I see programs, they posted their gear day and every kid got 26 shirts, a backpack, new wrestling shoes. And like, to me, that stuff isn't what it's all about. The kid that doesn't get the kids in the door, maybe to a degree. So I think just having balance. Tournaments cost money. We want to go down to get on a bus and pay the entry fee, and food at an average tournament costs us $5,000. Well, do I want an assistant coach or to have one more date on my calendar? So I think just balancing some of those types of things goes a long ways. And I think it's always amazing. It's hard to make a change financially in 1 year, but I think everybody forgets about it after that. We always used to go to a tournament down in Florida, and it was awesome, right? It was a cool experience. It was also a massive, massive hit to our finances, right? And everything continues to get more challenging financially, right? In the first year, we went with less guys to Florida, and then we went with less, and then we didn't go to Florida. And when we spun it, and it was true that we felt like it was going to be better for our national duels training. Guys didn't have to make weight right after Christmas. We didn't have to draw the line that these 20 guys go and these 15 don't. There were a lot of positives, and all of a sudden guys were all about it, and we had $30,000 to spend elsewhere. So I think just balancing, just because you've done something every year doesn't mean you need to continue doing it, and making those small changes year to year can go a long ways financially as well.
Coach, you also said that you like that CEO role, that you don't need to be in the corner, you don't need to be the guy in the room. You have other guys for that. But you have a historic program with a lot of history, rich history. Do you feel that pressure on yourself?
I think at first, especially, we did, but once we got that first national championship, I felt like we've proven this concept, especially so our coach, the coach who won 10 national championships is our athletic director, right? And he's like superstitious, wear your socks the same length, you can't change the singlet, like when we won nationals in 2015, it was because he didn't change his undershirt. And it's like, whatever, right? And he's awesome, but he's definitely like a details and you do things the same way. And so I think that was a challenge, especially being a young coach, making some of those adjustments that I felt like were necessary. And so I think every year we've made a little bit more and we're seeing the results, right? And when parents are going out and selling your program to the next generation of guys and your wrestlers are sticking around and coaching and you're having that success, I think it solidifies things. So I don't think I feel pressure. I think I felt a lot of pressure at the NCAA tournament this year because it was the first year that felt like we were the best team, and we wrestled like we felt pressure and we were the best team. We didn't wrestle very well whatsoever, right? Things definitely didn't go like we planned it. But you find a way and you fight through some of those things, and especially you hide it from your team. That's another place where having that partner with Coach Molsoff, who's 60 couple and I'm 34, he's got a lot more life experience and I can bounce a lot of things and lean a lot of things on him. And again, I talked about how personal he is. He's massive in my life and helping me get through some of those things. So yeah, there's certainly pressure, but I feel like understanding that that's part of it, and that it can either get in the way or you can use it to your advantage and trying to do that as much as possible.
And how do you manage the pressure as a coach, but then also get the kids to manage it, knowing that they are the best team at the national tournament and to just to perform at the level that they're capable of?
Yeah, I think that's where you lean back on your history that we peak at the end of the year. We always do. This training cycle works. We've seen it year over year. I think that that's an advantage. I think that's part of why we struggled to beat Wartburg in that Battle of the Bergs. I feel like they were selling that dream and our guys were feeling the opposite. We haven't beat these guys. We haven't figured this out. So I think tradition helps with that. I think having the wealth of different coaches that can click with different guys, some guys who are really emotional or some guys who just need to be left to themselves. I think they click with different guys and kind of have that one-on-one relationship that they lean into. I don't need to fully connect, be the number one guy for 35 or even 10 starters. I only need to do that for a few of them. Obviously, as the head coach, I need to support all of them and they all need to feel like I've got their back, but I don't have to be their main support system because you can't. I think about one of the hardest points from the national tournament. I still think about people don't understand how hard coaching wrestling is, right? You coach a basketball game and you lose. When's the next time you play a basketball game? A week later, a day later, whatever. Wrestling, I remember at the national tournament, we had returning national champ senior, one of my closest guys, Sam Stahl, who got beat in the blood round basically, or the round, maybe it was the round before, but he's out. His career's over, right? You have that emotion. We didn't wrestle well. We were returning national champ. And one of my other closest guys who's in his first national tournament is wrestling in the quarterfinals to be an All-American, the biggest match of his life. He's excited. He doesn't need to feel that. And I'm literally went from one corner walk across trying to figure out, do I console this kid or do I go bring the energy for the next guy, right? And kind of balancing those things and doing that all and wearing that and trying to bring the energy for the next guy. And I think that, that was a good example of how hard that was. And thankfully, Blake got it done, brought my energy back up. I needed that, right? But I think it's just such a unique sport that you go from, there's such highs and lows within a tournament, within minutes. And as a coach, you got to absorb that and kind of try to shield the other guys from it. We try to focus on them worrying about themselves and none of the others. We kind of have a quiet room area. We try not to be in the arena. We never bring guys back, win or lose, to that area quickly. We let them calm down. And ironically, that's always been our strategy. When things really weren't going our way, before the placing round, we actually said, screw this, we're switching it up. And we brought them all together and we basically said, these aren't fifth place matches. These aren't seventh place matches. This isn't your individual match. This is effing team national championship matches. It's time to wrestle for each other. It's no longer about you. It's about this team and wrestling for each other. And we actually won all 6 of our placing matches, which was the difference. We were behind by about 5. The last placing match was at 197 for 7th. It was between us and UW La Crosse, and we were tied at the time. And it was guys who had split during the year. Garrett Kovchinski, a Fargo champ who went to La Crosse, a superstar, and then our guy, Parker Vance. And we ended up, he tried to throw us, and we put him on his back, and we pinned him. And so we went into the finals instead of losing up by 3 and kind of set up our closers. But I think just even changing that strategy mid-tournament, like, hey, these guys are feeling the pressure. We had guys in the tunnel area. I didn't realize this till after some talking to assistant coaches. We had a guy in tears. Is it over? Had we lost? They didn't know what was going on. They knew we weren't wrestling well. But so I think pivoting and changing that strategy when the guys needed it and they just needed a change up was something that worked really well for us and something that we'll lean back on, that you don't have to go in and do the exact same strategy. Different groups and different settings click in different ways. So that was gratifying too for those guys, to win those last 6 matches. We clinched the championship then at 184 in the national finals. One of our best guys all year round, Bentley Schwannebeck Osterman, was a superstar, beat a guy from Johnson in Wales. And then we put the cherry on top, winning the heavyweight title as well. So we ended up winning by about 7, but those finals matches are worth 4. So going into the finals, 3 different teams had a chance to win the national tournament. So that was certainly a different experience, that's for sure. I won't say that wasn't as enjoyable. I never want to do that again. I'd like to just wrestle better and have things locked up. That's a lot easier to go wrestle free. So
Especially going down to the wire to lay the especially if you started at 125 too and worked your way towards heavyweight, you gotta nail
we
bite all the way through the finals.
We did. We knew that basically we controlled our own fate after that 97-pound match. If we
Yeah.
won both ours, one of them was head to head with lacrosse, and we were ahead of Wartburg, who also had 2 finalists. So we knew that if our 2 guys won, we won. And I think that was so. Well, again, I talked about why I enjoyed wrestling better. I enjoyed that so much better than relying on another guy team beating one of them. So we knew our horses were pretty tough, and those 2 guys were 2 of our core senior leaders that we had leading on all year long. So I felt pretty positive about it. And honestly, we just hung out in the tunnel. I didn't watch any of the finals matches prior to it. We just kept things light. We didn't even really warm up until we got our bodies ready, but we kept those guys loose, and music, they weren't following any of it until basically 15 minutes before they wrestled. We felt like they had plenty of pressure all weekend long. So I feel like that strategy worked well too, just keeping things loose for those guys.
Coach, you talk about breaking tradition and bringing the team together and saying you're not wrestling for yourself right now, you're wrestling for the team. And obviously, you grew up around the program. Your brother went there, you wrestled there, you were an assistant coach there. Did you know when you took the job or when you became an assistant coach that it was more you were going to be a leader of a community and not just the coach of a wrestling team?
Yeah, I think so. I think you feel that as a wrestler, right? When you've got a quarter of the fans or whatever, when you have a huge contingency at the NCAA tournament and they're loud and they're rowdy and alumni are involved, you feel that extra support. And it can be pressure, but honestly, it's more support. You feel like they got their back. And think of being from a school that's got 1 qualifier and having 300 Augies basically mat side
Yeah.
just and chant, and you take a breather for a second and they're yelling East Coast timeout or they're whatever, right? They're after you. And so I think it's an advantage. Some of my favorite moments from the NCAA tournament don't even involve Augsburg wrestlers. It's when our section gets behind a wrestler wrestling a Wartburg guy usually, and that wrestler loves it. Like we had a guy from it was Messiah a few years ago. He beat a Wartburg kid and he had like a cowboy hat, and our guys did, I think, and he came over and got a picture with our JV guys who were going wild for him. He didn't know what was going on, but he loved that support. He had never had 400 people cheer for him at once in college. So I think that support system is very evident. I think that the Augsburg wrestling program is unique. I know there's lots of programs that have that family, but I think just the longstanding tradition in Minnesota, especially, and having mostly local guys from Minnesota and now Wisconsin, I think is a big piece of that community feeling that we have with this program.
You got me fired up.
Yeah, for sure. Rich, you have anything else for Coach? You want to get on the final
I
four?
mean, I could talk all night. I want to be respectful of coach's time, and yeah, I mean, it's been an honor and pleasure to chat with you. Definitely appreciate you filling us in on some of the things that we were not too sure of. We did have Coach Miller on during COVID, so we've made that connection to the Battle of the Bergs, and now we're even more invested in it. And I look forward to following you guys this year. I guess maybe the one thing, you mentioned in the beginning, Coach, that you guys don't have a conference for wrestling, and that it's hard to get some teams, especially sometimes for Division 2 teams, because it maybe doesn't necessarily look good for them or for recruiting when they get beat by a Division 3 school. And I guess that would tie back to what Coach Oliver said in the clips that broke the internet was we were trying to talk about what is most competitive, and the way Jimmy beautifully clipped it up, it made it sound like he was saying that Division 3 is the hardest in the NCAA, but it was more about it being the most competitive because Division 3 has the most schools, and getting to the national tournament is so competitive because there's so few of those 130 schools that you can actually qualify for. Can you speak a little bit about that closing it out? How competitive it is to qualify for the Division III national tournament?
Yeah, the Division III wrestling is the largest division. We continue to add. I think I just saw a school in Texas, McMurray, and then another one in New Jersey, I believe. Um, I think it was New Jersey, is adding. I just saw Keene State or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like super cool. We're going to be over 130 programs. So I think numbers alone make it challenging. During my wrestling career, we dueled the University of Nebraska Omaha during my first 3 years. They won all three Division II national championships during that time, and we beat them at our place, and they beat us at their place. So I feel like a good example of that. I think the D3 champs can compete with the D2 champs year in and year out, right? A year ago at the NWCA Classic, they had the 57 pounders. They invited, he's a Minnesota kid, an awesome kid, Novak from St. Cloud State, but Hurdle from UW La Crosse beat them in that, two defending champs at those two. So certainly there's tons of great D2 wrestlers, NAI wrestlers, JUCO wrestlers. We got a ton of respect for those programs, but I think Division III has a ton of those guys as well. I think to win a national championship at Division III, usually you're going through somebody that started at the Division I level at some point, right? And it didn't work out for whatever reason. The qualifying system, thankfully, we're going up to now 210 qualifiers. So we got 30 added. So they're resetting the regions to be 7 regions, but especially out here in the Midwest, those regions are a grind. And Coach Oliver has to go to the lower Midwest, was what it was called, which had all the Iowa schools, including Wartburg. It is hard to get through the region, right? To be a national qualifier and to get through those things. So I think that was probably his point. I liked that it sparked a little bit of a debate on the
Oh,
internet. When in my competitive career, I beat multiple Division II individual champs, and I never won a Division III national title. So I guess I was an example of that. A little bit about how hard it is. I think that was the same case for my brother. I think he beat 3 or 4 different D2 champs and never won a Division III national title. So I think that all those divisions have a ton of depth. Jason Bryan, I go back to, we were just talking today, he's going to announce our regional. So I think he's been to like 25 Fargo championships, 25 D1s. It was like 20 or 15 NAIA. He's been to the world championships, and he still says that Division III championships are one of his favorite events in the top few, because there is such depth that there's always going to be upsets. Number one seeds go down first round at the Division III national tournament on a regular basis because there is a ton of depth and because there isn't quite as much crossover. So seeding isn't quite as simple as after the Big Ten championships. And well, we had an example. I talked about our defending national champ got beaten the pigtails and got beat out last year, right? So I think that adds a lot of excitement to the tournament too. So all the divisions are tough. I think Grandview is an interesting phenomena. They'd be a tough team to take on, but we certainly would be open to wrestling those D2s, those NAIs, and settling the score there a little bit. That's for sure.
well, Coach Mitchell is also a former guest to Airey Bros Radio. Maybe we can have the Airey Bros duels or something.
There we go. I like it. I like it.
Yeah. I'm down for that, Rich. I like that. Maybe not the Division I guys want to wrestle the other divisions, but I think there is something that can be done with Division II, Division III, NAIA, JUCOs. It's only going to be good for the sport.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it'd be cool. The All-Star Classic. I think that D2 versus D3 match was super cool. Why not just add a couple of those in to highlight it? What's it add? 15, 30 minutes to that event? I think that there'd be a lot of energy in having whatever weights you got champs, invite the champs back, and if they want to have a match, I think that'd be really exciting for the wrestling in general, both those sports. So maybe something we could get added to one of those events or something too.
Yeah, it would be great to bring more interest to it, bring a little parity to it, and it was because of a Division II wrestler winning 6 Division III and Division II wrestlers or athletes, even in track and field and cross country, from competing at the Division I level. So it's they can compete.
Well, even my freshman year was the last year we dueled NDSU. So NDSU had been a D2 program. They won some national championships and they had transitioned to D1. So we that was the last year we had a D1 school on the schedule and we beat NDSU my freshman year and they said no thank you anymore after that either. So I'm not saying we beat NDSU today. They've evolved a little bit, but we did the last time we wrestled in 2009. So we've got the last word in that rivalry as well.
Heck yeah.
All right, Coach. Before we get in the Final Four, one question I have for you, kind of off the topic of wrestling. I was doing some research today. I sent Rich a picture. Do you got any Lincoln Logs going on with the boys? So you had some epic building of Lincoln Logs, Legos, Lincoln Logs. You doing that stuff with your kids?
We do a little bit of both. It was actually my oldest two both started their first day of school today. So Lincoln's going into first grade. Hudson's doing preschool in the mornings, and then I've got a 2.5-year-old. So we do a lot of building with Lincoln Logs, Legos, magnet tiles are a new thing that are pretty sweet. So that and in sports we do a lot of. So they're a heck of a lot of fun, and they're super involved in our program as well. They've got 39 role models in our program. They were just up. We had like a spike ball team event and they were playing catch with a different wrestler basically the entirety of the time. So they certainly got a lot of guys that they look up to and somehow they got Augie singlets from somebody. So they're gung ho about it. That's for sure.
Right on. So they'll be have they started getting, do they wrestle each other, I should say? How did the three of them get along?
They beat up on each other, that's for sure. We've been easing into it. So Lincoln did wrestling practices and stuff last year. We haven't done any competitions or anything. I feel like the danger to me is because I'm so involved in wrestling is I don't want to push it on them too early where they get burnt out. I want them to like the sport, and I think they will. I think it's some of my moments that make me feel the best is seeing them interact with their buddies. We got some of the trophies and different things downstairs, and Lincoln had a buddy over the other day, and he was showing him our wrestling trophies from Augsburg, right? And I feel like how cool is that? And so hopefully they want to wrestle someday. So we'll see. It's up to them.
That's awesome. Coach, first Final Four I got for you. Are you a coffee drinker?
I'm not. No, I go the Celsius route a little bit now, but not really coffee too much.
All right. You have a favorite flavor of Celsius?
Not really. Probably the Arctic Rush if I had to choose one.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Coach, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of yourself?
Yeah, I think with having the three boys, it's mainly having a little bit of family time in the morning. I think the nice part about wrestling or whatever you want to call it is the hours are kind of later, right? A lot of times the recruiting calls, the practices are kind of into the evening. So sometimes I miss dinner. So we always try to have breakfast together. We make pancakes or lots of different things. And so I think spending that time with my boys and my wife to get the day started is something that sets me for the day always.
Are you cooking the pancakes?
I'm cooking. I do most of the cooking at the house. So wrestling season, we don't have quite as much food. We're a lot more quick things during wrestling season. Sundays are a big day, that's for sure, to get some things made up.
Oh, heck yeah.
Coach, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Yeah, I tried to do a little bit of all of it. I've got a little bit of a commute, so I try to get some podcasts. I love the D3 Nation podcast that the Bonaventuras do supporting D3 wrestling. I've got a new podcast here. I can go listen to the Jim Miller episode now that I heard about that one, right? So I think trying to support the wrestling world. If you guys got any books recommendations too, send them my way. I feel like wrestling season is when I usually need them the most. My ritual on match days, I hate weigh-ins because every time a kid's going to come show me some ringworm 5 minutes before skin checks or he's going to be getting his weight out. So I avoid that. So I go over there, but I pretty much read for 2 hours from the time we get to the arena until the time we have warm up. So that's usually when I get a lot of that type of stuff done. I'm excited for the new, actually, I don't know. I think Ben Askren's got some unique perspectives on things. I think he's got a book coming out here pretty soon. So I'm interested in seeing some of that. Wisconsin wrestling's kind of got it rolling as well.
Yeah, they've definitely got it rolling. And I've seen him now that he's stepped away from from Flow. He's kind of become a little bit more, I guess, vocal or putting his opinions and thoughts out there as of late. I've seen a couple videos pop up in my feed that I've checked out. So what kind other than sports related books, is there any kind of topics that interest you when reading to avoid weigh-ins?
Nothing, nothing too crazy. I even go down the route. I did some of the Game of Thrones and some of that stuff
Okay.
at one point in my life. But I like any of the, wrestling related or sports related books, especially. I've read Tom Ryan's, I've read Jim Miller's, I've read some of the wrestling mindset or the faith-based ones. So I like trying to support those guys, especially too, a lot of times in wrestling, it's not the most lucrative sport in the world. So most of the people are doing it for their passion. So anyway, I can support that as positive.
Right on. Right on. I just gotten back into reading this summer, and I'm reading through Foxcatcher again for the
There you
second or
go.
third time. I just picked that up, and I'm just mowing through that. So if I come across anything, I'll give you a holler.
Yeah, perfect.
Coach, last one we have for you. I know you're a busy guy. You got some kids at home. Do you have a guilty pleasure?
Good question. I would say probably pop is my guiltiest pleasure. I feel like I just like carbonation. I like every part of it. It was hard for me in wrestling season. We at the end of the season we tended to have, we call them like training table, where we kind of had a little team meal up in the cafeteria. You put those pop machines, that wasn't good for my weight. A little shot in one of those things turns into three, four, five of them pretty quickly. So feel like probably that, but overall, I feel like we do a lot of cooking. We don't eat out too much, so most of the things are within there. I do enjoy a good old fashioned. That's probably my drink of choice to not be full. I'm not a big beer guy. I feel like I get full as soon as you have a couple beers and try to have a burger or whatever on a Friday
Mhm.
night. So one old fashioned before when we travel for tournaments is usually the strategy.
Okay, okay. And for the folks back home in New Jersey, listen, Coach is talking about pop. He's referring to soda.
I figured that might come up. I was specific. I said pop for a reason. We're in the Midwest here, so
Yeah.
You
It's
ha
even funnier down in the South, like down in Atlanta, they call it Coke.
Coke,
Like
yeah.
Coke Pepsi, Coke Sprite, Coke. Do you have a favorite pop?
Probably Mountain Dew if I had to
Mountain
choose, but
Dew.
I'd pretty much go with anything. So,
All right, right on.
yeah.
Coach, thank you so much for your time tonight. Again, can't wait to root for the Augies this year and that gentleman you got from New Jersey, see him in the singlet. Really excited for what you guys have coming up. Get that three-peat going this year. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Had a blast and awesome that you guys are promoting the sport and specifically Division III wrestling tonight.
Yeah, we love it. Coach, and when that is a gentleman from New Jersey on campus yet?
He is, yep. So Max Borton, he's a 184 pounder, awesome family, awesome kids. So we're certainly excited about him. He's been working hard and looking to prove something, that's for sure.
And you said he's from Tabernacle, correct?
Correct. Yep.
I'm pretty sure that's in South Jersey. So if you want to, when you see him tomorrow, ask him, say, Max, is it pork roll or Taylor ham? And just
Okay.
see
I'm
what kind of reaction he
gonna
has.
make a note. I'll see.
It's a New Jersey delicacy. It's a breakfast meat.
Okay.
It's kind of basically it's similar, fairly similar to Canadian bacon. It's
Got
a
it.
circular thing, but there's certain dividing line in New Jersey where people in North Jersey call it Taylor ham, in South Jersey we tend to call it pork roll. So it's one of the questions we always ask our New Jersey guests. So that'd be something you could throw at them.
Well, the other thing that's cool that I didn't mention, I guess, that for New Jersey is you guys talked about the college in New Jersey. Coach Galante is bringing his crew out here this November. So I think one of the other cool parts of growing up in this is you start building relationship, especially with the other young coaches. So I've got a great relationship with Anthony Bonaventura, who just took over the Stevens program, and then Coach Galante. And so both of those programs are coming to our Augsburg Invitational in November. So we're going to get a little bit of East Coast guys there. And then Castleton in Vermont was looking to find us on the schedule. So we're meeting them at the North Central invite. And then our national tournaments out in Providence, Rhode Island. So we get a little bit of East Coast flavor this year with our schedule and in the NCAA tournament too.
Well, sweet. We're definitely looking forward to supporting y'all, cheering from you from afar, from down south here. Best of luck with whatever of summer you have left. Enjoy it, and we look forward to following you on the mats come November.
Sounds good.